All right. All right, we're recording again. So now we're going to talk about Art Deco, like more like a dedicated presentation of Art Deco. Share screen. And you are, oh, there we go. Okay. Art Deco, which is, and there's also a variation called Streamline Modern. Hey, this is very distracting. Um, okay, so why is it called Art Deco? This 1925 Paris exposition, international exposition of decorative arts and modern industry. So Art Deco is, the name of it comes from this exposition. So it's really Art Deco, as I said with the earlier presentation. It combines modern ideas, modern design, which is really like, in some respects, it strips away a lot of the fussy details of neoclassical ornament and the sort of heavy, dark, cluttered interiors of the Victorian age, and replaces it with something, um, I guess, less cluttered. This is not that. This is a little bit cluttered, but like these, like we saw this in some of the earlier interior designers. These, there are like, you get like breaks in some of like the sort of fussiness with big, like some of these like big white wall surfaces. You can see what looks like reeded columns, which is Egyptian, and there definitely was a sort of like a um, traditional. There were definitely traditional elements of like French furniture, like 18th century French furniture. There were Egyptian themes um, in Art Deco, and also what are referred to as ethnographic. Um, African art and sculpture became popular, kind of became known and popular throughout the Europe and the United States, and so you get certain elements of African design, or like there's it's kind of like chinoiserie, where it's like it's African, but it's done by it's like Europeans making things that they think look African, which gets it's so like it very easily so like slips into chauvinism, where it's really not. It's almost like it's like they're doing it because it's like it's a um, uninformed in some respects. So also like you see like this architectural detail of the sort of soft ziggurat with this sort of like zigzag or like stepped back repetition. That's a common feature in deco design. Okay, so Hollywood set design. Cedric Gibbons was a set designer. This is from a silent film, Our Dancing Daughters, 1928. And so deco was like this, was sort of like seemed like it was well suited um, for films, because like this really it has these sort of like modernized traditional elements. I mentioned like the that's you can see the fireplace around here with this sort of like which is this is a ziggurat, this sort of stepped pattern. Whoops, um, and it is like there's a type of pyramid, the ziggurat pyramid, that Aztec, like you know ancient cultures of the Americas and ancient Persian culture um, built those. Emile Jacques Roulemont. So there's another colonial exposition. So colonialism, the Europeans colonizing Africa is really an ugly, um, you know, part of history, um, and it's more like it's treated more as if it's just interesting to European culture, and so it's like it is it's similar to chinoiserie, where it is a um, it's done more as if it's like it's interesting, but it's definitely this is definitely European. So these chairs, really, I think I don't mind these chairs at all, with the big like leather um, and the white piping on them, um, but that sort of exaggerated arm makes them look really like big and soft and comfortable. Comfort is definitely an aspect of um, deco. So your author, Mr. Smith, writes about popular or vulgar Art Deco, and this is what he's talking about. It's like mass-produced stuff that looks deco-ish, um, but out of context, or just not, or just done poorly. You end up with something like this. It's kind of hard to believe that upholstery comes out of the 1930s, but um, it does. Here we go. This dressing table. So very glossy surfaces, like glossy wood finishes. You can see the reflection in the base of this dressing table, and it has so like the do you see the urn very prominently displayed in this dressing table? And the urn makes you think of Greek, Roman, I hope. It should. So there's definitely a sort of, I guess, what you could call historicism to it. It does not shy away from tradition, but it's doing so in a very, very modern way. The forms are a lot simpler. They are, I mean, this dressing table um, is very, very well made. The finishes are very um, carefully and expertly done. So here's a cabinet by Ruhlmann with this white marquetry. Beautiful wood. Daybed from the 1920s. And you can see from the reflection on the side of this daybed, which is almost a sofa, how glossy that finish is on the wood. So very chunky, heavy piece of furniture. Um, this is you know this is not cheap furniture. This is substantial and well made and expensive to purchase. Um, Angular features in Art Deco. This is this sort of stylization of the human figure and even landscape, uh, making things more angular, even cubist in a way. The this is from the mid 1920s. Cubism in art. Are you familiar with Cubism? Like Pablo Picasso, Georges Braque, these kind of like flat looking like paintings where this sort of like um, well, it's meant to show like kind of like flatness and dimension all at the same time. And it's really this idea of stripping away realism and getting down to something more geometrical. Hey, here is a like French Deco interior that is meant to have African elements to it. There's a painting up here by the Italian painter Modigliani, and but this sofa by Marcel Cord, I have to. It always looks like a big nut to me. I think it's beautiful, but you see like the way the seat cushion is formed, where it tapers to the ends so that it fits into that big curved, the big like the sort of curved cavity inside. Lacquered chair. So ethnographic design that draws upon African sculpture. Um, um, it's part of Deco. For myself, I don't think I would design outside of my own culture, but this was a time where it was um, no one really thought anything of it. Eileen Gray, here's another role model for you. So Eileen Gray is she was originally she was born and raised in Ireland, and she went to France to learn excuse me, the trade of lacquering, which is being a good getting good at applying lacquer is challenging. It has to be done in layers, and it's easy to kind of screw it up. But these very even lacquered surfaces on some of this furniture. Um, that is that's kind of like where Eileen Gray started. She was a furniture designer, interior designer. She designed some very. She had a pretty broad, like a very broad range of ideas. So like this, these table legs, it's like, I mean, it looks a little. They're not that graceful. But you see this very glossy lacquered top, or those two like those discs for the top and the like lower shelf. Lotus table with tassels. Don't forget the tassels. So that lotus, that refers to the Egyptian, but done in a modern way. Lacquered screens were these sort of like freestanding screens were popular as a way of dividing space. I think it is not exclusively an Asian idea, but it seems like it's more maybe like something that's more Asian, less European. Dragon's armchair. Some of her furniture is, um, yeah, I don't even. It's like this chair always like it's like I don't know what to make of it. Like where, like this is like her barbarian phase. Um, I love the big, like these big horns on the side. Um, a floor lamp, lacquered wood, painted parchment. Very unusual. Here is an apartment design, and here this very interesting pirogue sofa, which is a type of boat with a cushion in the middle. Looks very, I mean, I think it's very interesting, but like that silver leaf on the inside, that's a lot. It's kind of like, like the metallic stuff, that's classy to me. To my eyes, some aspects of it are a bit overdone, but I think it's actually pretty, as an object, the artist in me looks at that and thinks, well, that's just cool. I don't care if it's practical, it's cool. And coolness, you should not discount the coolness as an important factor in design. This one, sofa, similar to that, like there's that Ruhlmann sofa, or like that. So I guess it's a day bed, but this is this interesting idea that the arm cushions or side cushions are just other big cushions you just throw on top. So this stuff is, sort of in that vein of like very loungy furniture. But the frame of it, I mean, look how massive the arms are. Not screwing around. Entrance to an apartment in Paris. I see there is a little hard to see it. I'll show you this here. Black lacquered screen. So each of those panels have little like pins that allow them to rotate. I think it's a beautiful three-dimensional pattern, and I think that is something that you get like in terms of design fundamentals. Um, Definitely, designers do this where they think about, you think about something like a screen like this that when it is folded to stand, it creates a pattern in 3 dimensions. I mean, interior design is three-dimensional design, and architecture is as well. Go. Animal skins. You've already mentioned how I feel about animal skins. I'll say it again. It's tacky. Um, I love this weirdo bibendum chair. It's got a steel, like a tubular steel frame. You can see it is cantilevered, which means the back of it is not supported. So when you sit into it, it'll like sort of like kind of like sink a little bit with your weight. You can see the bibendum chair right there. We'll see this in some of the Bauhaus modernist furniture. But I really, this 1924, her work often to me seems it's way ahead of its time. And she's designing furniture that is like, in some respects it's experimental. Some of it doesn't work all that well, and some of it is really, I think, quite brilliant. And this unusual, this chair I think is really brilliant. It's almost like it was designed in like the '60s, it's like pop, it's like kind of like pop art chair. And there was like inflatable furniture that kind of steals this idea in the '60s. This one, this Transat chair, like this one, kind of like that like the dragon chair. It's got a lot of detail and parts, and it's a bit fussy. The idea of having like the seat is just like it's just kind of slung there, and the seat's not. It's like designers are always trying to come up with like like if you're designing a chair, how many chairs have already been designed? You're trying to come up with something new. You get something like, then you have experiments like this one. Okay, so here's an interior with her Transat chair. This is a colored view of the photograph, sort of like a collage. Adjustable table. Steel. So like this steel, the steel tube starts to get used in the 1920s for furniture, and it's a new thing. And it's an industrial. It's basically it's an industrial product that really didn't exist before, and it is strong and flexible. It's strong and um, malleable or easy to form. We'll be right back and see what's going on in the kitchen. This. Does this look like it was designed in the 1920s to you? This has never looked like it belongs in the 1920s. This looks like it's like 50s at the earliest. This is one of my favorite things by her. But you can see this use of this steel tube that is it forms the base that runs from front to back down at the bottom, then up also forms like the support for the lower part of the structure, and then it goes all the way under, comes back out here for this kind of a back, but it's more of like a design element, not necessarily something that would be comfortable. So in the USA, Art Deco often you see in you'll see a lot in architecture. So this is we almost got this building in Chicago. This was second place in the Tribune Tower competition back in the 1920s. So the Tribune Tower that's there now with the sort of like Gothic architectural elements on it won, but I really wish they would have chosen this one. It's better design. And Eliel Saarinen, Finnish-born architect, came to the U.S. His son Eero Saarinen is one of the designer for Knoll and also an architect. Eero Saarinen designed the St. Louis Arch, the womb chair, the TWA terminal at I think it's like now like I guess like the one of the New York airports. So what you see here with this, so what makes like these tall buildings, like in the U.S., we're like building tall buildings. In the 19th century, steel production, I mentioned like the improvements in steel production. The Bessemer process was a process in which like air was blown onto the iron as it was being formed, and the addition of oxygen hardened it so that you could make large quantities of steel, and so we get these taller and taller buildings because steel frame that's allows you to build higher. The setback tower, where it gets smaller as it goes up, um, is an engineering. Has so like it's that's sound engineering because if it gets it's you can go taller if it gets smaller as it gets higher. In this era, this is no longer true necessarily, but you see this sort of like fit the Art Deco ziggurat of this sort of like getting to smaller as it gets as it goes up. So setback tower, that is what that is called. Here is an elevator door to this is the old Union Trust building in Detroit. Very beautiful. You can see again the ziggurat in the tile above, that surrounds the upper part of that triangular. I guess that's kind of like a pediment in a way. It the geometry and so like I guess the like yeah, this like it's almost like there's this decorative geometry. Skyscraper bookcase. We'll see this in the this is something that is a part of like what makes Art Deco a modernist and modern style is its use of simpler geometry like the rectangle or the triangle and the circle. We've seen like the Greek and Roman and then all the many neoclassical styles that came after. In the late 19th and early 20th century, there was more and more an interest in just getting rid of that, like just like stop using Greek and Roman ornament as if it's the best thing that was ever made, because that originated thousands of years earlier, 2,000, 2,500 years earlier. So what would be like what should architecture and design look like if it's meant for today? And industrial production had something to do with this, but World War I was a very devastating war in Europe, and the artists and designers and architects that came out of that, really that was kind of like they're like that's it. The old monarchies got everybody, like there were all these old ancient treaties that said if France goes to war with Russia or with Germany, then England has to come into the war on France's side. And if France goes to war with Germany, then Austria has to join on Germany's side and declare war on England and France. And all these countries had all of these treaties. It's like this sort of like war treaties and sort of alliance treaties. And all of a sudden, in like kind of almost overnight, um, um, you know, thanks to an assassination, everybody was at war by obligation. They didn't have the good sense to say like, well, you know what, this is kind of stupid. Maybe we don't want to just all jump into war. But different era. The difference in World War I was industry had created bigger and more destructive weapons, chemical weapons. If you may have heard of a thing called mustard gas, that was just like it was a new weapon. So they're like, okay, just shoot it at those guys, and it was really sloppily done. As with so many wars, they assumed it would all be over quickly and we will win. And it dragged on, and the destruction and just like the damage and all the harm done by old governments and industry led to a lot of the younger designers, architects, artists, writers that did not get killed in that war to come out and say, we are going to use industry to change things. we're going to shed all of this old ornament that is from past eras that have nothing to do with us, and we're going to create something new. So geometry, just simply going back to geometry, was a way to do that, was a way to get rid of classical ornament. As you can see with art, with a lot of Art Deco and some of those interior designers we looked at earlier, they don't completely get rid of it, but it kind of depends. Some of them, like more like the more proper modernists, like the more strict modernists, did get rid of it, and then we'll see that with the Bauhaus. With Art Deco, there is still this, and this Art Deco is more French, and like international style modernism is more German. Both of them end up coming to the United States. All right, the Chrysler Building in New York City. This is an Art Deco icon, really. And this is all like right around the time, like this, I guess. So the Chrysler Building, this is sort of like just before and just after the devastating stock market crash in 1929. And yeah, and the stock market didn't even hit its lowest point until 1932. So there's a long period of economic trouble that happens. And there's still there is still this sort of optimism of what we can do. These just like super tall buildings, and look at the detail on the surface all the way to the top. That is beautiful. Fiesta ware pottery comes out of this period of time. Oh, was that it? Oh, I thought I had a little bit more. Well, you get the idea with Deco. Do you get the idea with Deco? If you have questions, ask. Okay, so Art Deco, and then das Bauhaus. I have to say I am biased toward this. The Bauhaus is one of my favorite things. So you got, so this is a German so the Bauhaus is a German, it's part of a German, like a state German, like art and design school. And okay, so you see Walter Gropius. Do any of you know about, have ever, any of you know anything about Gropius? Okay. So it's kind of relates to what I was just saying about the shedding of the shedding of the classical. Gropius was an architect. He was from northern Germany, which is like before it combined with Germany, it was known as Prussia. And Prussians often, I'm sure there are still people who are from that region who would say, I am not German, I am Prussian. A lot of the German military came from that region. Gropius himself was in the German army. He was a cavalry officer, and he fought in World War I. Nearly died multiple times. And when he came out of World War I, he had already been working as an architect before World War I, and as many men felt that when that war started, they were obliged to go and fight it. He was already doing these interesting things with glass and just trying to see like what can we do with glass technology. The structure, the structure of this stairway does not call for any structure on the outside. Like that stair is like the circular stair has a column in the center that supports the stair, and so you can have this sort of glass frame around it, which is very modern idea to just show what's inside. To some people in 1914, this would have been made them feel very exposed, just having nothing but a membrane of glass between themselves and the outside. It would have seemed dangerous, unstable, but the architects and the engineers knew that there was no need to have structure on the outside because it wouldn't have improved anything. Gropius, when he was, I read a biography of Gropius and the Bauhaus, and it is called Bauhaus, A Crucible of Modernism. If you're looking for a interesting book to read about this over the break between semesters, check it out. It was written by a woman who was one of the first scholars to go to the former East Germany after unification of East and West Germany. And so there were a lot of archives in East Germany that had been closed to Western scholars up until that point. And so she had access to some like new information. And so she wrote a couple of very interesting books. Another one about Mies van der Rohe, which is about his career before he left Germany and came here, which was also fascinating. It's called Architects of Fortune. The cover of it misleadingly has a swastika on it, and that's because he if officially joined the Nazi Party in the 1930s so that he could work, because otherwise he was shut out of doing any kind of architecture. They still wouldn't let him do anything meaningful, so he left and came to the U.S. and to Chicago. Good for us. But so Gropius, as a student, before, like when he was a student in architecture, he was told the best thing you can do is copy the successful examples from the past. And that doesn't really sit well with any student. I mean, if someone told you you're studying interior design, but all the good stuff has already been done, there's nothing you could possibly contribute because everything before you has been so great. So just learn to copy it. It wouldn't be it would not be nearly as interesting. Not that it wouldn't be completely dull. Okay, so Gropius and Adolf Meyer, they were associate architects. So this is a model factory. So this is like the Deutsche Werkbund is sort of like a organization of industry and architects, and very different from someone like William Morris. The German Werkbund wanted to use industry to find new ways to use industry to make new types of architecture, or just to do new things, really to just take advantage of the possibilities that industrial production provides. So looking forward instead of nostalgically back. This may not look so modern, but like this very unusual. Sometimes I don't know what to say about this building. I think it's beautiful, but it's I don't know. I guess more sculptural to me. Anyway, Mies van der Rohe was a dreamer. He liked to dream up. He did drawings of skyscraper, like glass skyscraper and concrete skyscraper, projects before they could have been built. So this is a drawing from 1921. This was not built. It was just a drawing that he made. Um, and there are others where he made these, he was trying to think of what, knowing what they knew about architecture and engineering, what could we do with it? And so he was imagining these, really buildings that were ahead of their time. This is a woodcut by the artist Lionel Feininger. Um, this is the cover to, it's sort of like an image that goes with the Bauhaus Manifesto from 1919. The Bauhaus Institute existed from 1919 to 1933. When 1933 was when the Nazi Party that was now in power, or then in power, shut them down. They were weirdos. They were socialists. They were international. There were Jewish faculty. All kinds of problems. But this, this woodcut sort of shows this. This is a good. I think this would be a good example of cubism. The Bauhaus Manifesto itself is it expresses a lot of socialist ideas of just everything, pretty much. I mean, it's really very idealistic. And just it wants industry to work for everybody. Okay, so the campus of the Bauhaus, originally they were in Weimar, home of Goethe, in a very culturally conservative part of Germany. Eventually they wore out their welcome. They moved the Bauhaus Institute to the city of Dessau, and Gropius was able to design and build the buildings for the Bauhaus Institute in Dessau. So this is one of the main workshop building. This sort of smooth typography is unique. They had the school taught art and design and architecture, industrial design, and it was a very revolutionary concept that when students went to the Bauhaus Institute, they took something called the basic course. And at first it was their entire first year. Later they shortened it to the first, the first semester. But students took just general courses in drawing, painting, sculpture, design, color theory, and they had the students try a lot of different things. And they let the students, through their working, help sort of figure out what is it that they prefer to do, which things are they best at, and then after that first year, the faculty would meet with the students, look at the work, and make a recommendation. You should go into the furniture design workshop in your second year. You are clearly, they can see from some students' work, this student is clearly a painter. You're going into the painting workshop. The student weaving workshop. So it was a really unique idea that they wanted to find out what the students would just kind of gravitate toward. Normally in education, it was who cares what you think? Here's the curriculum, you just do it and you force yourself into the curriculum. So there were a lot of revolutionary, sort of more progressive educators involved with the Bauhaus. There was a band in the 1980s called Bauhaus, and they're great, but it's not the same thing. This is the Bauhaus. They had a theater workshop run by a guy named Oskar Schlemmer, and um, they there was like, I guess, like they used theater to express design principles. Male students and female students worked together. There was still a lot of you know um, like I'd say most of the programs were male dominated, but there definitely were female students there, and there was a weaving workshop that was completely dominated by the female students and had was run by a woman named Annie Albers, who was a really good artist and designer. There's Gropius, 1883 to 1969, first director of the Bauhaus Institute. He left Germany, as a lot of people did, left Germany as the environment was becoming inhospitable to creative people in the 1930s, and ended up teaching for a long time at Harvard. And he created like the Harvard Design Institute. He and another guy that we'll mention here, Marcel Breuer, sort of helped create they made Harvard's architecture and design school more of a destination for modern architecture. Okay, so this is pre-World War I. This is a factory. And you see these similar to like the windows. You can see the structure inside, and he really did. He really just like took advantage of the fact that the structure meant that you could have a lot of windows. So I guess steel and concrete meant that you didn't have to have large masonry walls on the outside. Here, this is Marcel Breuer, B3 chair from 1925. Bent steel tube frame, chromed, Eisengarn fabric. So it's got this sort of canvas-like fabric slung on it for its seating. So there's no, it's got no cushions. It's just, kind of like a director's chair in a way. Here in the finished designer's apartment, Alvar Aalto's apartment, you see this Breuer chair. So the steel tube is it's this new thing. Breuer was one of the people that pioneered its use. Eileen Gray also. Mies van der Rohe did, and then there's a Dutch designer named Mark Stam who also, they're kind of all working, it's almost like when there's a new material, everybody starts working with it. And so you get a bunch of people using it. I don't think you could credit only, you couldn't, I'm not sure who did it first. But this Seska chair, you can see without the arms. I like this chair without the arms better. There are versions of this without the arms. But the steel is a continuous, it's just like, this actually goes up and stops. No, this is part of the arm. So it's this almost like this loop of steel tube, and it's cantilevered, so there's nothing back here beneath the back end of the seat. And the steel is flexible and strong so that when you sit into it, it creates pitch, which is the angle of the seat. And I show this with a bentwood tonneau chair because it has some similarities to it. Marcel Breuer table. glass and steel. So we're getting into the era of glass, steel, concrete. And some of these pieces look a little clumsy, but they were early experiments. Some of them still like not working out their how to do this efficiently. Marcel Breuer made a comment once that like this, using this steel tube to create the structure, and really and then not covering it with anything, just letting the steel be, you know, the steel is the material. Um, he felt that this was efficient to the point where you couldn't really improve it, and um, I think in some respects that's true. I mean, it's sort of efficient down to the point where how could you make this more efficient? I think it'd be nice if this table did not have this rectangle. But stop that. This rectangle here, but it's simple and effective. By the way, I don't know if some of you may already know this. The difference between simple and simplistic is that simplistic is excessively simple. If you are complimenting something for its simplicity, then you would say, "I like this. This is simple." Simplistic is it's kind of simplistic, means that it's too simple. Okay, Wilhelm Wagenfeld, a Bauhaus designer, metal and white glass. So the Bauhaus, one of the goals of the Bauhaus was to have the students design industrial products. And the idea was that this would in part help pay for what they wanted to do. They wanted to have the students design lamps, wall coverings, textiles, teapots, and some things did get put into production and sold to financially benefit the Bauhaus Institute. But a lot of stuff was like this. It's an art school, so they make something like this, and you can't mass produce this cheaply. It's this is way too fussy, way too interesting, and it is very interesting. This is Mariana Brandt, and so in that respect, that never quite panned out. Here's a woven tapestry by Annie Albers. So geometry, something that is what is called non-objective, meaning it does not have a picture of something. That's part of what the modernists, like this sort of strict, like the European modernists were about. Perspective, like linear perspective and creating the illusion of real space, was considered dishonest because it's not real. There was an essay, I think it's by a guy named Bruno Taut. Maybe not, I don't know if it's Bruno Taut. It was sort of like something that was sort of written, I think, in the teens, called "Ornament and Crime," and it is kind of a comical polemic against traditional ornament, and it sort of ties it to a low moral character. Which I love it when they do. Like people fight over this stuff. Like they're punch somebody out over ornament. I love it. I'm not condoning violence, but it's like the people are that passionate about it that they're just like I'm gonna kick your ass. Traditionalist. People, humans. I'm right, you're wrong. So, but considering that this was the they were the modernists. These modernists were very serious about this, partly because of what they experienced in the teens during World War I. that tradition had really nearly wrecked, just like nearly destroyed everything. Okay, so here is Gropius, uh, the design for the Bauhaus dining hall. Do you remember the Frank Lloyd Wright cafeteria in that the Larkin building in Buffalo? Cluttered, heavy, massive furniture. Um, this is nice, isn't it? Efficient. Lecture hall with fold-down seats. All very modern. This is Gropius's office. This is his office in Weimar, so this is not the later Dessau Bauhaus. But you can see the modernist furniture. The carpet is from a design by the painter Paul Klee, who taught at the Bauhaus. And the I love that, like the light overhead. Elliot, stop. Okay, yeah, so you can only advance it once. So here, student dorms. This is in Dessau. Modern buildings, and they also design houses for the studio masters. And these, people still build like this, almost 100 years later. So they kind of set the standard for what modern architecture looks like. It's rectangular, it's like it's meant to. It looks like rectangular volumes. I mean, there's you know space inside, but pretty cool stuff. Um, Tablecloth, so textiles. The textiles and wall coverings were some of the most popular stuff that the Bauhaus students produced, and they continued to be made through the 1930s. There were people in the Nazi Party that felt like the Bauhaus modernism was German and should be preserved as German. The traditionalists were more like Roman neoclassicism, and people who design this like geometric abstraction, they're just degenerates. But very popular, very successful. Like some of their like more like their geometric designs. The workshop wing, so similar to that factory, the pre-World War I factory. You can see the concrete and steel structure on the inside, and these windows that just wrap around, letting in all kinds of light. Okay, so getting a little away from the Bauhaus, French Bauhaus inspired interior. I'm not wild about this, but so when you get away from the strict like the German Bauhaus and get into other like more like commercial applications of it, it sort of like merges with Deco. This is more like a Deco interior to me. Here, home furnishings. This is an English company, I believe. Um, it took some time for people to accept like this sort of like that steel frame, the tubular steel and glass, as something that would be appropriate for just residential design. This is like more like popular, like the kind of thing that most more like middle class, which is like many, many more people than the people who are like getting like Dorothy Draper's interior design. Um, Gropius and a lot of like the Bauhaus idealists really wanted to make modern design affordable. They were really sort of like one of some of the first people to promote the idea of affordable housing, um, and they were not completely successful. Um, Gropius, like a lot of other architects of this era, he developed plans for a like prefabricated modular architecture that could be built at a lower cost. It's the idea of like prefab architecture. It's never really caught on because people either want to go and see like the house is built, I walk in, I like it, or I don't like it. Um, you don't necessarily know like how big should my living room be. So like people like you could the Sears catalog had had like you could order like a modular house through Sears back I think back in like 1950s 1960s. But it's the kind of thing that didn't quite take off because people don't. I think it's so like that most people just want to know like the thing's built. I go to the house, I like it or I don't, and that's that. So so um, it really wasn't until after World War II when, especially in Europe, where like there had been a lot destroyed, that sort of like modern materials and modern design became, I guess like they were accepted because people needed it. So a lot of like low cost furniture um, needed to be produced. Now here, this lounge chair, this is not cheap. It's got like a nice piece, like that nice wooden um, piece on the arm. A very beautiful, um, like that's just like this like loop in space for that for the frame. But you see how like the seat just seems to float off the floor because it's not sitting on traditional legs. It's being held up by this loop of steel. So things do start to become more sculptural. Um, and we'll see this with the mid-century modern stuff like um, the furniture that's made by Knoll and Herman Miller after World War II. And the Bauhaus Institute was a lot like the little like if you like know a little bit about the history of Germany in this period of time. The 1920s after World War One were like a period of financial disaster followed by a period of um, relative prosperity, which sort of coincided with the rise of the nationalists with Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. And then once they took control in the 1930s, like 1933, um, people that were like artists, people that had any ideas different than the Nazis, either had to submit to the Nazis or leave. And so a lot of these Germans, like not just you know artists and architects, but also writers, um, psychiatrists, um, just a lot of intellectuals that had their own ideas left, and a lot of them came to the United States. So we got like like the way you take classes in a in an art and design program at an American college or university. You take foundations courses and like you learn about basics of two-dimensional design, color theory, You take drawing classes where you do just like really like basic stuff. You learn how to draw objects, like simple objects, and sort of like build up into more complex forms. That's all thanks to this like the model that we got from the Bauhaus. Okay, that is it. And we are out of time. So, there's a lot more to the Bauhaus than that. Mies van der Rohe was the last director of it. Um, Gropius resigned under pressure from the local government, and he was replaced by a colleague named Hannes Meyer, who was only in charge for 2 years. Hannes Meyer was an ardent socialist and politicized the Bauhaus and got the Bauhaus into more trouble with the local governments. And they, like Gropius, went to Mies van der Rohe and begged him, please take over as the director of the Bauhaus. You are the least political person I know. And so he agreed to do it, but it was too late. After a couple of years, the Nazis came and just said, "You can't have this school anymore. You're just a bunch of, you're degenerates. You are trouble to the German state." And technically, it was a state school, so it was very easy for them to just shut it down once the Nazis had power. So, and as I said, a lot of people left. If they could get out, they got out because, especially those that could see what was coming. And a lot of them ended up in England and the United States. So Mies van der Rohe really did not want to leave Germany. He felt that he wanted modern architecture and design to be, he felt that what they were doing was very German and it should be done for Germany. He tried to stay. There was but he was so well known that the Nazi Party felt very threatened by him, and so anytime he got any project, they tried to take it away from him. There was a case of like he was hired to design. It was like an exhibition of it's like an industrial exhibition that was like focused on silks. And this is the kind of thing like this is not what he wanted to be doing, but he's like, this is all I can get. So I'm designing this like silk exhibition, and even that, like, he made some pretty beautiful like interiors and like so like spatial designs for this, and even that they just came along and said, well, we're going to put somebody else in charge of it, and so he just said, that's it. This is, I think, 1936, and so Mies van der Rohe was just like, I gotta get out of here. Like he joined the Nazi Party because he felt like he had to. I don't know of him ever expressing any anti-Semitism, and so he just said that 1936, 1937, he left and came to the U.S. and came to Chicago. There was a school in Chicago called the Armour Institute. That was a technical college, and they recruited Mies van der Rohe to come to Chicago and take over and build an architecture program. Mies van der Rohe really, he wanted the job at Harvard, but Gropius got it. And so Chicago was kind of like his second choice. But they gave Mies van der Rohe pretty much sort of broad authority to just do what he wanted to do, because he had an international reputation and Chicago wanted him, and so the school was soon after renamed the Illinois Institute of Technology, or IIT. It's still down there at like state, like 33rd, 35th and state in Chicago. If you want to know about IIT, you can ask Carl about it. He went to school there. That's where he has his architecture degree from. And it's a good school. And Mies van der Rohe made it an international destination for students of architecture and engineering. So there. Okay. If you have any questions for me, you may ask now, or you can send me an email. And when we return, we will talk about mid-century modern. The third quiz is set to close 1 week from tonight, midnight. So please take some time and do that. I hope you have a good week next week and enjoy the holiday, whatever you choose to do.
Is there another vocabulary assignment coming up?
There will be one more.
Where from which words list should we choose for the final vocabulary? Like
I will. That is something that I will work on during the break.
okay, in the vocabulary section we see like until Baroque and
There's
Rococo.
nothing for the 20th century.
Yeah. So okay.
Thank you.
So for now, work on the third quiz and the third vocabulary discussion board. And if you have finished those, enjoy a little downtime.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Duffy.
too.
Good night.
Thanks so much.